The glass shattered against the marble floor as I stumbled through the doorway, but it wasn't my clumsiness that made my blood run cold. It was the sight of my employer, tech millionaire Adrian Cole, hanging unconscious from a ceiling beam, a leather belt wrapped around his neck. "Mr. Cole," I screamed, dropping the breakfast tray and rushing forward. The chair had tipped but not completely fallen, leaving him suspended between life and death, his face already turning blue. With strength I didn't know I possessed, I grabbed his legs and lifted, relieving the pressure on his neck while frantically looking for something to cut him down. Seconds counted. This man I barely knew, this reclusive genius who had hired me just 3 days ago, was dying before my eyes, and I was the only one who could save him. As I struggled to hold him up, my mind raced through everything I knew about Adrian Cole. 32 years old, founder of a cybersecurity empire worth billions, and subject of endless tabloid speculation about why someone with his wealth and looks had never been seen with a woman. The rumors called him everything from secretly gay to medically impotent to pathologically afraid of germs. What I hadn't expected was the profound sadness that seemed to emanate from him like a physical force whenever I cleaned his immaculate penthouse. Now, as I spotted scissors on his desk and stretched to reach them while still supporting his weight, I wondered what darkness had driven this man to such desperation. And more urgently, if I managed to save him, would he hate me for it? The belt finally gave way under the scissors blade and we collapsed to the floor together. I frantically loosened the noose around his neck, checking for a pulse with trembling fingers. They're faint but present. As I rolled him into recovery position, his eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on my face. The look of devastation that washed over him when he realized he was still alive shattered something inside me. "Why?" he whispered, his voice raw. Before I could answer, his eyes rolled back and he lost consciousness again, leaving me holding a stranger whose life I'd just saved against his will, wondering what secrets could drive a man who seemed to have everything to such profound despair. The next 24 hours transformed everything I thought I knew about my employer. After calling emergency services, I'd accompanied Adrian to the hospital, claiming to be his personal assistant since they wouldn't allow a mere maid to ride in the ambulance. By the time he regained consciousness, I'd already fended off eager reporters and a particularly persistent woman claiming to be his ex-fiancée. When the doctor asked about next of kin, I discovered there was no one, no family, no friends close enough to call in a crisis. Just a brilliant, wealthy man completely alone in the world, and me, Zara Williams, a 28-year-old woman with a spotty employment history and a talent for dropping things at the worst possible moment. "You should have let me die," were Adrian's first words to me when we were finally alone in his private hospital room. His voice held no anger, just a flat certainty that chilled me. "That wasn't an option," I replied, my natural stubbornness flaring. "I don't let people die when I can prevent it. It's a personal policy." A ghost of a smile touched his lips before vanishing. "They're keeping me on suicide watch for 72 hours. You're free to find another position. I'll provide excellent references." "Are you firing me?" "I'm releasing you from obligation. Most maids don't sign up to save their employer's life before breakfast." I studied him carefully. Beneath his composed exterior, I sensed catastrophic pain. What if I don't want to be released? His eyes narrowed slightly, as if I were a particularly complex equation he couldn't solve. "Why would you stay?" The question was simple but profound. Why would I stay? I barely knew this man. I needed the job desperately, in fact, but there were other jobs. Yet something about Adrian Cole's isolation resonated with a loneliness I recognized too well. "Because everyone deserves someone who won't walk away," I said finally. "Even millionaires who think they're better off alone." For a moment, vulnerability flickered across his face, so raw and unexpected that I almost looked away. Then his expression closed again. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're right-handed, but always open doors with your left. I know you organize your books by subject and then color within each category. I know you leave the financial news on mute while you work, but turn on classical music when you think no one's around." I paused. "And I know what it's like to feel so alone that disappearing seems like the only option." Adrian stared at me for a long moment. "I've never touched a woman," he said abruptly. "Not romantically, not sexually, not ever." The confession hung in the air between us, shocking in its vulnerability. I sensed this was a test, reveal his most shameful secret and see if I would mock him or walk away in disgust. Instead, I simply nodded. "Okay." "Okay, that's your response," disbelief colored his voice. "What would you prefer, horror, judgment? It's your life, Mr. Cole." "Adrian," he corrected automatically. "Adrian," I repeated, feeling a subtle shift between us. "I'm not going anywhere unless you actually fire me. I'll come back tomorrow." As I gathered my things to leave, he spoke again, so quietly I almost missed it. Thank you for saving my life, Zara, even if I'm not grateful yet. You will be, I replied with more confidence than I felt, someday. I didn't realize then how prophetic those words would be, or how saving Adrian Cole would ultimately save me too. The next few weeks established a tentative routine. Adrian returned home from the hospital with strict instructions to see a therapist twice weekly, which he reluctantly obeyed. My role evolved from just cleaning his penthouse to something closer to a personal assistant, organizing his medication, screening his calls, and ensuring he ate regular meals. The boundaries between employer and employee blurred, though Adrian maintained a careful physical distance between us at all times. Gradually, pieces of his story emerged. The brilliant mind that had built a cybersecurity empire from his college dorm room belonged to a man who'd grown up with a violent father and a mother who'd abandoned him at 12. His adolescence had been spent in foster care, where an incident he refused to detail had left him with a deep-seated fear of physical intimacy. Success had come early, but connection had remained elusive. "Why did you try to kill yourself?" I finally asked one evening as we sat on his balcony overlooking the city. 3 weeks had passed since that morning, and while the question had burned in my mind, I'd waited until I sensed he might actually answer. Adrian's fingers tightened around his water glass. "My therapist says I should talk about it." "You don't have to tell me." "I want to," he took a deep breath. "I received a call the day before. My last foster father died in prison." "The one who hurt you?" I asked gently. Adrian nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "He was serving 20 years for what he did to other kids after me. I testified at his trial, but I never told the full truth about what happened to me. I couldn't say it out loud. My heart ached for the boy he'd been, and when you heard he died, I thought I'd feel relief, freedom. Instead, I felt..." His voice broke. "Nothing, absolutely nothing, just the same emptiness I've felt for 20 years. And I realized it would never end, that he'd taken something from me I could never get back, the ability to connect, to touch, to be normal." I reached across the space between our chairs, offering my hand palm up, a choice, not a demand. "May I?" Adrian stared at my outstretched hand like it might burn him. Slowly, trembling visibly, he placed his hand in mine. I felt the slight dampness of his palm, the tension in his fingers, but he didn't pull away. "You're touching me right now," I said softly. "The world didn't end." "It's different," he whispered, "and this isn't sexual. Intimacy isn't just about sex, Adrian, it's about trust, connection." I gave his hand a gentle squeeze. "This is intimacy too." We sat there as the sun set, hands joined, neither speaking. It was the first time Adrian had voluntarily touched anyone in years, he told me later, a small step that felt monumental. That night, as I prepared to leave, Adrian stopped me at the door. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" "Should I be? Most people find me intimidating, cold." I laughed. "I found you hanging from a ceiling beam in your underwear. Kind of hard to be intimidated after that." For the first time since I'd known him, Adrian Cole laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face and made my heart skip. Fair point. As I rode the elevator down to the lobby, I realized with sudden clarity that I was falling for my employer. The complicated, broken, beautiful man who was slowly learning to trust again through the simple act of holding hands. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like coming home. What I didn't know was that forces were already in motion to tear apart the fragile connection we'd begun to build, and that the truth about Adrian Cole's past was far more complex than either of us understood. The invitation arrived exactly 1 month after the suicide attempt, an elegant cream envelope addressed to Adrian Cole and guest, requesting his presence at the annual Tech Innovation Awards. Adrian stared at it with evident distaste when I brought in the mail. "Burning it won't make it disappear," I teased as he held it over the trash can. "I haven't attended in 5 years. They only invite me because my company sponsors the damn thing." "Maybe it's time to break that streak." The words left my mouth before I could reconsider. "You can't hide in this penthouse forever." Adrian's expression darkened. "I don't hide, I choose solitude." Potato, I replied, earning a reluctant smile. "Your therapist would probably call it exposure therapy." "My therapist would call it a significant stressor." "Then bring backup." I busied myself arranging flowers to avoid his gaze. "Bring me." The silence that followed was so profound I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. Finally, Adrian spoke. "You want to attend the Tech Innovation Awards as my date." "As your assistant, friend, human shield, whatever makes you comfortable." I turned to face him. "Unless you're embarrassed to be seen with the help." You've never been the help, Zara. His voice was quiet but intense. You're the woman who saved my life, who sits with me on my worst days, who makes terrible jokes when the silence gets too heavy. My jokes are amazing, thank you very much. He ignored my deflection. If I were to attend, and that's a significant if, having you there would make it less unbearable. Such flattery, I laughed. How can a girl resist? And so it was decided. Adrian would attend the awards ceremony and I would accompany him, not quite as a date, but certainly as more than an employee. The prospect filled me with equal parts excitement and terror. In the month I'd known him, I'd never seen Adrian interact with others in a social setting. How would the man who couldn't bear to be touched function in a room full of people vying for his attention? The night of the gala arrived with unexpected complications. First, I discovered that my only formal dress had mysteriously acquired a delivery courier for Adrian's company, complete with size and style preferences. The midnight blue gown that arrived was so exquisite it brought tears to my eyes, modest yet elegant, perfectly tailored to my curves, complementing my dark brown skin in a way that made me feel beautiful for the first time in years. You shouldn't have, I said when Adrian saw me emerge from the guest room where I'd changed. You're right, I shouldn't have, he agreed, though his eyes conveyed a different message as they took in my appearance. But my assistant reminded me that appearances matter at these events. It's a business expense. Liar, I said fondly, you don't have an assistant except me. A hint of color touched his cheeks. Fine, I wanted you to have something nice, to thank you for agreeing to this torture. Adrian himself looked devastating in a tuxedo that emphasized his tall, lean frame. For a man who claimed to care little about his appearance, he cut an impressive figure, dark hair neatly styled, jawline freshly shaved, his usual intensity softened by evident nervousness. Ready? I asked, offering my arm without thinking. He hesitated only briefly before placing his hand in the crook of my elbow, another small victory in his journey toward human connection. As I'll ever be. The awards ceremony was held at the city's most exclusive hotel, a glittering affair of tech royalty and venture capitalists. The moment we entered, I felt the weight of curious stares. Adrian Cole, notorious recluse, had not only attended but brought a woman no one recognized. The speculation was palpable. Everyone's looking at us, I whispered as we made our way toward the assigned table. They're looking at you, Adrian corrected. They're wondering who captured the attention of the Virgin King of Silicon Valley. I nearly stumbled at the moniker. Is that what they call you? Among other less flattering things. His hand tightened on my arm. The tech industry runs on gossip and speculation. My inexperience became fodder years ago when a vengeful ex-employee leaked private therapy records. The casual cruelty of it stunned me. That's horrible. It's business. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Table 16 should be ahead on the right. We had just located our table when a voice called out behind us. Adrian Cole, as I live and breathe, the prodigal genius returns. Adrian tensed beside me as we turned to face a striking woman in her 40s, elegantly dressed in crimson. Vivian, he acknowledged stiffly, I didn't realize you'd be here. I'm presenting the Lifetime Achievement Award, she replied, her gaze shifting to me with undisguised curiosity. Won't you introduce me to your friend? Zara Williams, this is Vivian Reynolds, CEO of Nexus Technologies. Adrian's voice was carefully neutral. A former colleague. Former protege, you mean? Vivian corrected with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Adrian mentored me before I founded my own company, Ancient History Now. She extended a manicured hand toward me. Lovely to meet you, Zara. You must be quite special to have drawn our reclusive genius out of his tower. The undercurrent of hostility beneath her polished exterior was unmistakable. I took her hand firmly. The pleasure's mine. I've admired your work in quantum computing. Surprise flickered across her face before she composed herself. How unexpected. Adrian, your date actually has a brain. That's new for you. Adrian's jaw tightened. If you'll excuse us, our table is waiting. As we moved away, I felt Vivian's eyes burning into my back. I'm guessing there's history there, I murmured. Vivian was my first hire, Adrian replied quietly, and my biggest mistake. She stole proprietary algorithms when she left to start Nexus. Couldn't you have sued? The algorithms weren't the only thing she took. His expression was grim. She had personal information, things that would have been devastating if made public. Understanding dawned. She blackmailed you. Adrian nodded almost imperceptibly as we reached our table. Welcome to the tech industry, Zara, where brilliance and ruthlessness go hand in hand. The evening proceeded with excruciating slowness. Course after course of exquisite food neither of us could enjoy, interspersed with speeches celebrating innovation and disruption. Adrian maintained a facade of polite interest, but I could feel tension radiating from him like heat. When his company's cybersecurity platform won an award for breakthrough technology, he delivered a brief, eloquent acceptance speech that revealed nothing of the man I'd come to know. It was during the dessert course that everything changed. Adrian excused himself to use the restroom, leaving me briefly alone at our table. I was checking my phone when a young server approached, discreetly placing a folded note beside my water glass. "He's not what you think," the note read in hurried handwriting. "Ask him about Cassandra Project. Ask him what really happened to Marcus Liu." I stared at the cryptic message, a chill running down my spine. Before I could look for the server who delivered it, Vivian Reynolds appeared, taking Adrian's empty seat with predatory grace. "He won't tell you the truth, you know," she said without preamble, "about who he really is, what he's done." I carefully folded the note and slipped it into my clutch. "I think I know Adrian better than you might assume." Vivian's laugh was brittle. "You know what he wants you to know. The tragic backstory, the wounded genius too traumatized for physical intimacy. It's a compelling narrative." "It's not a narrative, it's his life." "Is it?" She leaned closer. "Did he tell you why he can't bear to be touched? Did he tell you what happened to his last assistant, or why he really tried to kill himself?" My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my expression neutral. "I'm not interested in gossip, Ms. Reynolds." "It's not gossip, dear, it's warning." She stood as Adrian approached, smoothing her crimson gown. "Just ask him about the Cassandra Project, see how honest your wounded bird really is." Adrian's expression darkened as he watched Vivian saunter away. What did she want? I hesitated, torn between trust and the seed of doubt Vivian had planted. To rattle me, I took a deep breath. "Adrian, what's the Cassandra Project?" The color drained from his face. For a moment I thought he might simply walk away. Instead, he sat down heavily, his eyes never leaving mine. "How do you know that name?" "Vivian mentioned it, and this." I showed him the note. "Who is Marcus Liu?" Adrian's hands trembled slightly as he took the paper. "We need to leave now." "Oh, Adrian." "Not here," he cut me off, his voice low and urgent. "If Vivian's talking about Cassandra, we're not safe." The drive back to the penthouse passed in tense silence. Adrian made 3 phone calls, speaking in terse, cryptic sentences to what sounded like security personnel. His transformation from the vulnerable man I'd come to know into this commanding, almost cold strategist was jarring. Only when we were inside his penthouse, doors locked and security system activated, did he finally turn to face me. "I owe you an explanation." "You think?" My voice came out sharper than intended. "Adrian, you're scaring me." He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling the perfect styling. The Cassandra Project was a government defense contract from 6 years ago, predictive algorithm for identifying terrorist threats before they materialized. Like Minority Report. Similar concept, less science fiction. My team created an AI that could analyze patterns across surveillance data, financial transactions, communications, identifying potential threats with unprecedented accuracy. That sounds ethically problematic. It was. Adrian's expression was haunted. We built it as a theoretical exercise, a proof of concept with strict ethical guardrails. But once the military saw its potential, they wanted to implement it without the safeguards. "And did you?" He met my eyes directly. "No, I shut it down, destroyed the code base, returned the funding. It was too dangerous. It would have resulted in people being detained based on statistical probability rather than actions." "So what does this have to do with Vivian, or your issues with intimacy?" Adrian moved to the bar, pouring himself a rare glass of whiskey with unsteady hands. "Marcus Liu was my lead developer on Cassandra, my friend. When I decided to terminate the project, he disagreed, thought we should let the military use it." He took a long swallow of the amber liquid. "We argued. He threatened to take the code elsewhere." A cold weight settled in my stomach. "What happened to him?" "The official story is that he committed suicide, jumped from the Golden Gate Bridge." Adrian's voice was hollow. "The reality is more complicated." "Did you?" I couldn't finish the question. "Kill him?" Adrian looked genuinely shocked. "God, no, but I might as well have." He set down his glass with a sharp click. "Marcus was unstable, brilliant but volatile. When I shut down Cassandra, he became paranoid, convinced I was betraying our country. The night he died, he called me, ranting about taking the code to a foreign government. And And I told him I'd personally ensure he never worked in tech again if he did. Adrian's face contorted with grief. 2 hours later, security cameras caught him jumping from the bridge. I sank onto the couch, trying to process this new information. You blame yourself for his suicide. I drove him to it, Zara, just like my foster father drove me to. He stopped abruptly. To avoid intimacy, I finished quietly, but that's not really why, is it? Adrian stood motionless, caught between truth and the lie he'd lived with for years. No, he finally admitted, it's not. Then why, Adrian, why can't you bear to be touched? Why live as though physical intimacy is impossible for you? Because I made a vow, his voice broke on the words. After what happened with Marcus, I swore I would never allow myself to be close to anyone again, not physically, not emotionally, because I destroy people, Zara. Everyone I care about ends up broken. The raw pain in his confession staggered me. This wasn't trauma or physical dysfunction, it was self-imposed punishment, a penance for sins he couldn't forgive himself for. That's why you tried to kill yourself, I realized aloud, not because your foster father died, but because I started to care about you, Adrian finished, the admission costing him visibly. From the first day you arrived, dropping that priceless vase and then swearing in 3 different languages, you made me laugh, made me feel, and I knew that would destroy you eventually. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Adrian Cole, tech genius and reputed virgin millionaire, had attempted suicide not because he couldn't experience intimacy, but because he'd begun to want it again with me. That's the most narcissistic thing I've ever heard, I said finally. Adrian blinked, clearly not expecting that response. What? You decided unilaterally that caring about you would somehow ruin me, without asking what I might want or think, I stood, anger replacing confusion. You don't get to make that choice for me, Adrian. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, I interrupted, advancing until we stood face to face. I grew up in foster care too, bounced through 7 homes before I aged out, worked 3 jobs to put myself through community college only to drop out when my foster sister got sick and needed care. I've been broken and put myself back together so many times I've lost count. Adrian's eyes widened slightly at revelations I'd never shared before. You think you're protecting me? I continued. I don't need protection, I need honesty. I need the man who holds my hand at sunset and laughs at my terrible jokes, not some martyr who thinks his feelings are so powerful they can destroy lives. For a long moment, Adrian simply stared at me, shock gradually giving way to something like wonder. You're not afraid of me. I told you that weeks ago, keep up. A smile, small but genuine, touched his lips. You're extraordinary, Zara Williams. And you're an idiot, Adrian Cole. I reached out slowly, giving him time to retreat and placed my palm against his cheek, but an idiot I happen to care about very much. His breath caught at the contact, eyes closing briefly before meeting mine again. Vivian will go public with everything. The Cassandra Project, Marcus, she'll twist it all, make me look like a monster. Then we face it together. My thumb traced his cheekbone gently. Unless you still think caring about me will lead to my inevitable destruction. Instead of answering, Adrian did something that surprised us both. He leaned forward and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss was tentative, unpracticed, but filled with an emotion that made my heart soar. When we broke apart, his eyes held a vulnerability that had nothing to do with inexperience and everything to do with courage. I don't want to be afraid anymore, he whispered against my lips. Then don't be, I replied simply and kissed him again. The media storm hit exactly as Adrian predicted. 3 days after the gala, Vivian Reynolds gave an exclusive interview alleging that Adrian Cole had driven a brilliant engineer to suicide over a military contract, then fabricated a tragic backstory to explain his reclusiveness. The tech blogs erupted with speculation and rumor. Old photos of Adrian and Marcus surfaced, along with out-of-context emails that seemed to support Vivian's narrative. Through it all, Adrian remained surprisingly calm. With my encouragement, he decided to fight back with the one weapon Vivian didn't expect, the truth. In a carefully orchestrated interview, Adrian revealed the full story of the Cassandra Project, including his ethical concerns about predictive policing and military applications. He spoke candidly about Marcus's mental health struggles and shared emails that painted a more complex picture than Vivian's simplified narrative. Most surprisingly, he addressed the rumors about his personal life head-on, explaining that his reluctance to form relationships stemmed not from trauma, but from fear of hurting others after Marcus's death. For years, I believed that caring for someone meant eventually destroying them, he told the interviewer, his hand firmly holding mine off camera. I was wrong. The real destruction comes from closing yourself off from connection. The interview changed everything. Former employees came forward with stories that contradicted Vivian's claims. Government officials confirmed Adrian's version of why the Cassandra project was terminated. Most damning for Vivian, evidence emerged suggesting she had been the one pushing to sell the algorithm to foreign entities, a revelation that triggered a federal investigation into Nexus Technologies. 6 months after the night I found him hanging from a ceiling beam, Adrian Cole stood at a podium accepting an award for ethical leadership in technology. The man who once couldn't bear a handshake now spoke passionately about the importance of human connection in an increasingly digital world. Technology should enhance our humanity, not replace it, he told the audience, his eyes finding mine in the front row. For too long, I believed that isolation was the price of innovation, that vulnerability was weakness. I was wrong. Later that night, as we walked along the beach near the small coastal home we now shared on weekends, Adrian stopped to face me in the moonlight. I have something for you, he said, suddenly nervous in a way I hadn't seen in months. From his pocket, he produced not a ring as I'd half expected, but a small, worn key. What's this? I asked, taking it curiously. The key to my first apartment, he explained, the place where I wrote the code that started everything, my beginning. His eyes held mine with an intensity that still made my heart race. I want you to have it because you gave me a new beginning, a second chance I didn't believe was possible. Tears pricked my eyes as I closed my fingers around the key. Are you sure it's a piece of your history? History only matters if you have a future to connect it to, Adrian said softly. You are my future, Zara, if you want to be. In answer, I stood on tiptoe and kissed him. No longer the tentative kisses of a man learning intimacy, but the confident embrace of someone who had found his way home. Our story wasn't a fairy tale. Adrian still had days when touch was difficult, when the weight of his past pressed heavily. I still dropped things at inopportune moments and swore in multiple languages when I did. But we faced each challenge together, two people who had learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness but the greatest strength of all. The tech world still occasionally whispered about the virgin millionaire who had finally found love with his clumsy maid. We let them talk. They would never understand that what we had found was far more valuable than the physical intimacy they focused on. We had found acceptance, trust, and the courage to begin again after believing all hope was lost. Sometimes the most unexpected people come into our lives exactly when we need them most. A brilliant man afraid of his own capacity for caring, a clumsy woman who refused to let him disappear, two souls who recognized in each other the same loneliness, the same resilience, the same hunger for connection. If you find yourself behind walls you've built for protection, remember that the very person who can help you tear them down might appear in the most unexpected form. It takes courage to be seen, truly seen by another person. But in that visibility lies the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that you are worthy of love exactly as you are. For Adrian and me, the journey continues, no longer defined by what we fear or what we lack, but by what we choose to build together, one day, one touch, one moment of trust at a time. If this story touched something in you, perhaps you too are seeking the courage to be vulnerable, to reach beyond your comfortable isolation toward meaningful connection. Remember that we all have the capacity to change our narratives, to find new beginnings when we least expect them. Thank you for sharing in our journey. May it inspire you to embrace your own wherever it might lead.